This is BBC Radio 5 Live, available on the BBC Sounds app. 5 Live Drive with Anna Foster and Tony Livesey.
Hello, welcome back to the heart of Westminster on College Green this afternoon, soaking up what has been, frankly, an extraordinary, again, 24 hours here in Parliament. It's the scenes yesterday that we saw in the Commons chamber are still reverberating. Now, I've just been speaking, actually, to the Labour MP, Paula Sherriff, if you remember that. Her exchange with Boris Johnson last night was really at the heart of all of this when she talked about her friend, her constituency neighbour, the murdered MP Joe Cox, and asked Boris Johnson to tone down his language, and he replied that it was humbug. So you'll be able to hear what she thinks about that a little later in the programme. In terms of Boris Johnson's prime ministership, it is still young, but it hasn't been the best of weeks. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court ruled that 5-week suspension of Parliament was unlawful. And they said, you remember, that there had been no reason, let alone a good reason, in their words, to advise the Queen to prorogue Parliament. Well, he's defending himself today after that vicious night in the Commons, but his biggest priority remains trying to strike a deal with the European Union in time for that Brussels summit of EU leaders next month. That is absolutely crucial for him on the 17th and 18th of October, because he's made it very clear he doesn't want to have to ask for an extension. So it relies on him to try and cut a deal with the 27 leaders in a few weeks' time. Well, Pedro Silva Pereira is a member of the European Parliament's Brexit steering group, and he met the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, for a briefing earlier today. Pedro, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What did Michel Barnier tell you today about the UK's position as he understands it at the moment?
Well, what I can tell you is that, according to the information we've got, we can say that we haven't seen any convincing signs of political will from the part of Boris Johnson and the UK government in order to reach an agreement in such a short period of time. In fact, until now, the British government has failed to present any concrete alternative arrangements to the famous backstop, at least alternatives that can address the three fundamental issues: safeguard of the integrity of the single market, ensure that there is no hard border, the Irish border, and a no-island economy. We haven't seen concrete proposals of that. So I would say there's not very much optimism here in Brussels about it.
Just for clarity, I mean, if those concrete proposals do arrive and they're workable, are you willing to consider them? Are the EU willing to try and find some sense of compromise here, or is it a question of whatever the UK government delivers, that won't be enough?
No, absolutely. The EU is ready to consider any proposals that can really address the issues. It's very important for everybody to understand that the EU didn't invent this issue about the Irish border. The goal of avoiding an hard border in Ireland is a common goal from the EU and the United Kingdom. And the fundamental problem is that we cannot achieve this goal and at the same time have a substantial regulatory disalignment between the UK and the European Union. So this is the reason why we need a safeguard mechanism, setting the conditions in order to avoid controls at the border, and we remain willing to consider the famous alternative arrangements. Yes, we are willing to do it, but the truth is that Boris Johnson has failed to present those alternatives until now.
Well, look, that deals with the technicalities, I suppose, of what you need to see. But obviously, politics are about personality as well. You can't separate the two. And do you feel, from what you're seeing of Boris Johnson's leadership style, of the way that things are happening politically in the UK, that he actually wants a deal? Do you feel that he is genuinely trying to achieve something here? Or is there any sense of reticence from the EU side that actually that's not what he ultimately wants at all?
Well, I wouldn't like to be in the position to say what is on his mind. We are seeing contradictory declarations. In one hand, saying that he will comply with the law and the act adopted by the House of Commons, but anyhow he will leave the EU, even if without a deal, by the end of next month. So we are seeing contradictory political statements. But this is not a matter of interpretation of the political will of the other. It's a matter of fact. There were a number of meetings. Some papers were presented, but they are much more aspirational in nature. They don't present concrete proposals, legally operative proposals that can really address the issue. How can we ensure the integrity of the single market? How can we avoid control at the border? How can we ensure an all-island economy? That's the remaining issue.
Pedro Silva Pereira, thank you for joining us on Drive, member of the European Parliament's Brexit steering group, fresh from that meeting, that briefing earlier today with the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier. It's all about the papers as far as they're concerned. It's all about the proposals. He says they're waiting for the government to put something concrete, workable on the table. He says they haven't got it quite yet. That summit in Brussels on the 17th and 18th that we're all looking towards now is going to be a big one. It's worth saying, by the way, when the time comes, you'll hear every twist, every turn here on Drive, because we like to get out, which is why I'm here in West.